Welcome to the Simply Real Life podcast. I'm Sarah, the founder of Simply Real Health, here to help you simplify, amplify, and elevate your life. This show is for those of you who want the real talk on how to live a more intuitive and intentional life, a life that's healthy from the inside out, and one that feels more effortless, aligned, simple, and more alive. We cover it all, from health, wellness, mindset, motherhood, daily habits and rituals, to business and relationships, creativity and growth, and tiny tricks to feeling your best, and the energetics behind it all filled with personal stories, unfiltered conversations, and of course, answering all of your burning questions, all in the way of simplicity and keeping it real, so that you can create your own version of your healthiest life. Let's do it. Welcome back to this week's episode on the podcast. I hope that whatever you're doing right now, you can just take a deep breath and let it out. Life is good, right? It's so good when we take a couple seconds to just refresh ourselves and re-nourish ourselves. And to me, listening to podcasts is one of those ways, just even energetically feeling refreshed, thinking about something different or hearing a new perspective. And so today we've got a juicy one, and it can be a very emotionally charged topic. I actually feel a little bit, just a tiny bit nervous to share all of this stuff very vulnerably and openly, because I know that it can be this touchy emotional subject, but it is one of the questions that I truly do get asked the most, and asked if I can just explain it in a little bit more detail. Okay, are you ready? This week's topic is about feeding my kids. So let's back up for a second, because I have to say that one of the funniest things people used to always tell me before I had kids was, oh, just wait. Just wait till you have kids and you'll see how you will probably need to feed them packaged food, and you just need whatever is quickest, whatever is easiest. And basically saying the way that you eat is probably not going to be something that you're able to do once you have kids, or at least for them. Kids just are super picky and they don't like things like vegetables, and just wait. I cannot even tell you the amount of eye rolls I had, or just some of those comments of, oh yeah, you'll wait and see, you have no idea. So I'm sure that has probably been a little tiny bit of fuel, in the back of my mind. Why couldn't it be? Why couldn't I think about raising my babies to eat in a very similar way to the way that we eat, which is just very simple, and it's all about real foods, and it's not about doing anything extreme or intense or intricate or stressful. Honestly, that is the way. If you have my cookbooks, it's the recipes are usually 5 ingredients or less, 15 minutes or less for most of them. Trying to help people understand this idea that being healthy does not have to take a ton of time. It doesn't have to be hard. It doesn't have to be complicated. You don't need a million ingredients. And so I would hear people say that to me, and I would just kind of think, okay, well, that's your story. That's your interpretation. That's the way that it has been for you. And I can honor that experience for you, but also please don't place that story onto me. So a little bit of fire, inside. I'm just okay, that's true. You may be right. I have no idea. I'm just going to wait and see how it is. Take all of this as I'm talking through this today. Understand just where I come from, which is this love and passion for real food, and just the power source that real food truly can be in your life. It's a really high value of mine, right? It is something that I do think is so important that I take the time, I figure out workarounds, I just want to find some creative ways to make it work, even in a busy life. And I just love finding creative loopholes, oh, that's a quick hack. Oh, that's an easy way to get the same result, but in less time. I'm also somebody that is totally fine doing things different than the norm. I have found that for myself, the way that I eat, the way I move through my day, like it is very different than like the social norms. So I knew that when I had my own kids, I'm like, well, let's just see, right? I'm just going to take this. This is all a practice run. I mean, that's what parenthood is in general, right? Just all practice run. You just do the best you can with what you know. So for me, I know a lot about real food. And as I started to research when my son was a baby and starting to eat, I just kept having this feeling of like, oh my gosh, this is so overwhelming. Like all the research I was doing and all the different methods I was looking into, it was, whoa, this is like so much. And then I started to notice that a lot of the things that were suggested were ways that I myself would never eat, right? Or if I was thinking about, oh, if I am sort of creating and building their bodies from scratch, what would I want it to be made of? And a lot of that stuff was just not really feeling to me like it was being addressed. Also in a way of doing it simply and easily enough, because when you do have a baby that's so young, so much else is kind of busy and chaotic in your daily life, and there's not a ton of extra time. So for me, I always like to start with the end in mind. What is the result that I want from this? So even with something like feeding my baby or feeding my kids, I had that moment with myself. How do I want this to look? Instead of just doing what everybody else does, which is something that I noticed time and time again, just over and over with all of the adults that I work with, is that we have this tendency to just follow along, do what everyone else is doing, not question it. And I think as adults, we do this with so many different areas of our life. But at least for me, I have learned that particularly when it comes to food, I know that I just do things a little bit differently, like that I want to do things differently than what the social norm is or the cultural norm. I'm kind of on my own, on my own page sometimes on that, and I am okay with that. So starting with the end in mind of thinking, how do I want my kids to be raised? How do I want their bodies to operate? How do I want their health to be? And knowing that food is connected so deeply to all of those things, that's where I started. And so I had this vision, and what I've always known to be true is that I would like food to be this very simple, almost effortless feeling thing where it's a big value for our family. We love food, we enjoy it. Hopefully we're building good relationships to it right from the beginning and just teaching them about the beauty of food from even a really young age, the variety and the types and the flavors. So for me personally, right, this is a big value in my life. And I always had this vision of wanting to feed my family like the same thing, that I didn't want to be making extra meals. I didn't really want to deal with picky eaters. Like I am all about simplicity and efficiency, and like those just don't really fit in my vision of accommodating all these different things. And, I know that there are so many ways that we can impact our kids. And to me, giving them, at least trying to give them the gift of just full, robust, vibrant health, even from a really young age, thinking about their digestive system and building their immune system and building their gut and helping their brain develop. All of these things are huge things, like very much connected to the food that we eat. Again, this is true for adults too, but sometimes it just hits differently when you think about your kids that way. Like it truly does have this direct impact. I think having that initial bigger vision really helped guide my steps in terms of like what I wanted to do or how I wanted to like proceed with food. And as many of you know, it became this sort of secret passion of mine that as I got into all this research on baby food and looking at things and wanting it to be just more nutrient dense food and food that was easy, that is where the baby food files came to be. I just had so much fun getting into things and thinking, let's make this more simple. Let's make this more easy. Let's make this around foods that we already have in the house because this is what we eat. And just doing so much more research on brain development, gut development, and taste bud development. All these things that I knew and already teach to adults. The same was true with kids. The same was true with babies. So again, I am not a certified expert in any of this, but I do have the experience now of raising two babies both of which are very non-picky eaters who love their vegetables, who eat the same foods that we do. And so I feel like there is a little bit of method to my madness here that I am more than happy to share, because I also feel like I didn't have a lot of examples to look at and see what does that look like. And is that even possible to have non-picky eaters and kids who love vegetables and kids who just love their food, and it's not this big anxiety producing issue in the parent's life? And that was truly my goal and my intention, and happy to say, at least at this point, right? You never know. Kids go through so many phases. I'm not the one controlling them. I'm just merely providing the resources, providing the food, having the options, setting our boundaries around it. And so far, it's been something that has been just so cool to see unfold. So that is the point of this episode, is just to share with you a little bit more behind the scenes. Everything that I did for both of my babies, like starting them out on this real food life, are all inside the baby food files. So that's something you can find in our shop. It's on the blog. It's truly this incredible resource. I'm not kidding you, 47 pages long, like resources and guides and recipes, and also quick non-recipes, just ideas that you probably have these staples around your house, how to feed that, how to introduce them, and then a month-by-month guide that has recipes for each month of development, both for their brain, their gut, and their taste buds. So all of that has been captured and it is ready for you. And when I had my daughter, I literally followed the exact same process and was so thankful that I wrote all that stuff down, because, you just forget. That's just mom life. Sometimes you forget. So here are some tips and things that have kind of helped me along the way, and little guiding principles or things that I have found that for the amount of effort that they take and the impact that they give, like that ratio is pretty awesome. I'm going to start with something that might seem obvious, but again, I think it's worth saying that your kids and your babies are purely modeling a lot of what they see you doing day in and day out. So if you want your kids and your babies to grow up eating vegetables, trying different foods, loving their food, taking the time to sit down and eat and nourish their body, take a look at what you are doing. Honestly, even from a really young age, and this is not to make you worry about it or that you have to be perfect, but I do find that for a lot of families and a lot of kids, it really does start with the parent first. Are you eating tons of veggies in your day? Are they things that are normally around your house that you are snacking on, putting into your meals? It's just a happy, normal part of your routine. Are you drinking water? Some of the very basic things that I think sometimes people get very overwhelmed about when they think about feeding their kids, feeding their babies. Their bodies are so pure and they're new, and you are in charge of building their systems, building their cells, building their immune system, building their digestion. There is so much, I think, to be said about, well, let's look first at ourselves. And that is actually where I always suggest starting, even when I'm working with clients, is just start doing this for yourself first. And the trickle down effects that will have can be amazing. Even without you saying one word, just what you do as your norm, not about being perfect or rigid. It's just what you do for the majority of the time. That is the stuff that imprints, and that's the stuff that matters. And that's the stuff that they look at and see as normal or something that's not normal. So another tip I have is that, especially for babies, just starting them as young as you can on real food being the normal will make things so much easier in the long run. If that is their normal, they are never going to think it's weird to have avocado on their plate, or vegetables. That is something they've been eating since day one. Their taste buds are very open to it. They are very adaptable. Starting as young as you can. A really interesting fact is that when babies are born to the time they're about 18 months old, their taste buds are completely pure and completely open. So doing as many sort of different flavors, textures, really focusing on healthy fats and vegetables, getting some protein in them, as many just different flavors as you can, especially flavors that are not super sweet, can be so helpful in the long term. Most adults, I will just say as an example, walk around and their taste buds are completely covered. They're completely coated in things that come from more processed foods. So there's things like natural flavors, and there's chemicals, and there's extra sugars, and there's these chemicals that are even made in manufacturing plants to make foods, especially more processed foods, taste like extra salty, extra cheesy, extra spicy, these flavors that don't really exist in nature. And eating more of those foods or having them often in your life, or even things like candy, or gravitating towards things that are just super sweet and sweetened all the time, can also make your taste buds much more dull. And that the only thing that you can taste then are those chemicalized foods, like those fake flavorings, instead of real food. And when your taste buds are coated like that, it makes it very hard to actually enjoy something like a piece of broccoli, a piece of celery, a carrot, even, because that will taste so bland in comparison to the types of foods that you have been eating that maybe have a lot more chemical moderation to them. When you think about that from a perspective of kids, and you think about that perspective of babies, like they are a true, clean, open slate. Just getting them to have these more savory flavors really can just save you so much time and so much stress. And to have them be open to things and used to trying a wide variety of things. This is one of the reasons why I wrote the baby guide, is to walk you through even what that looks like, that it really doesn't have to be complicated, and that whatever you're making for yourself, you can probably easily give to your baby. Maybe it's slightly modified, especially for babies, but for kids, it doesn't have to be. So really taking advantage of that window, that first 18-month window. And also, don't worry if your kids are past that, or if you're an adult. This is an easy thing that you can actually start to focus on, like cleaning out your taste buds purely by reducing a lot of the processed foods and starting to include more real foods into your life. That natural sort of detox process can happen. It usually takes about 2 weeks. So this is something just high level, if you are thinking about this in the context of kids or your family, that over time, if you can start to lessen the load of the processed stuff or even the processed health food, look at your ingredient labels as the most important thing, not what it says on the front. The front of every label is just marketing, just marketing. They can say anything they want on the front of the label, but the truth is always in the ingredients. Are they simple? Are they normal? Are they natural? Can you pronounce them? Or do they sound like they're just normal, real foods that have been around forever? Or is it something that has been created or man-made? So again, this goes back to like the more real food you can have involved in your daily life, the chances are higher that your kids' taste buds and your own taste buds are going to gravitate and like and be able to enjoy their meals that are made with whole, real ingredients. I am such a big fan of doing vegetables and putting butter on them if they're just steamed veggies, and a little sea salt and pepper makes it taste amazing. Roasting your veggies or grilling them, just preparing them in ways that also enhances the like factor of them, that you're not just eating it because you have to or you feel like you should, actually truly enjoying the things that are then also serving of your body as well. Another tip I have for this too is that just like a reframe. Yes, this can take some thought. And yes, it takes a little bit of prep in that you need to go to the store or have groceries delivered or have these daily staples on hand that do make it easy. These, sort of ingredients for quicker, easier meals that are made with real food. It does take some prep. And I think a lot of adults see that as this negative thing, just one more thing I have to do. But I would just invite you that it can also be an invitation to step it up for yourself, to step it up for your whole family, and knowing that any amount of time that you put into this, whether that's getting stuff at the store or it's cooking or it's, trying a different sort of food with your kid and it makes this a fun experience, that any amount of time that you do put into that effort will usually be such a good use of time, right? So seeing it in that time and efficiency, you feeling better, their taste buds are more open, you can start to eat the same things, which is actually just going to save you so much time in the long run and save you so much hassle and stress and all of that. Okay. Here's a couple nitty-gritty sort of weird things that beyond just the baby stage, getting into toddlers and kids. And keep in mind, my kids right now are, 4.5 and 1.5. So in 2 different stages. I know this will probably change as things get older, but for right now, my son is in school. We do social events. We are doing outings. We're around like tons of food and other experiences with other kids, with other families. And I can see how the way that we do things is very different, but it also doesn't seem to faze my son. It's just his normal. So he doesn't really think twice about it. Now, maybe as we move into elementary school and they start talking about it more and having all these like preferences, maybe I'll record a podcast then too about how that phase goes. Okay, here are some tips that help. One is that in terms of sweets or treats, we definitely do those, not for the youngest, but for my toddler. I just think about having the best quality version of that thing as possible. If it's ice cream, we just make sure it's good ice cream or good gelato, not one that has 16 lines of ingredients of different things like cream, milk, sugar, vanilla, whatever the flavor is. And he loves it, and we do have that conversation with him of these are sometimes foods. They're not all the time foods. And that has just been a phrase that I have found helpful. Well, why can't we have ice cream every day? I know ice cream is awesome, no matter what the food is. It's my philosophy that you can always upgrade whatever it is that you want, whether that's a cookie, a scone, a baked goods, muffins, ice cream, chocolate, even candy. There's so many upgraded versions of that. So that's just what we do. It's not that we don't have them, but we just don't have them daily. And they're kind of more on special occasions, or if we're on vacation, or if we're out on a summer night and it's, we decide to all get ice cream. It's just like a special experience in itself. It's not something that we necessarily do every day, but trying not to make those things bad or not good, but they're just little delights that we sprinkle in. Another little tip I have on that topic, for as long as you can, hold off on the added sugar, especially just added cane sugar. I introduced honey and maple syrup, I think after 2.5 years old. Maybe it was 3 for my son, first kid, And I am just so glad that I did, because the tendency for kids' food is just like whatever's quick, whatever is easy, and it's usually packed with sugar, sweet stuff. The pouches and stuff, it's like all sugar or sugar-based with like a tiny amount of a vegetable in there. And I just have the philosophy, like, let's just flip those ratios where vegetables are the things that we actually dominate with the most, because their flavor profile it's so different. They're so neutral tasting, whereas sugar, you do get that dopamine hit and it's a little bit more addictive. And so leading with the vegetables first and just going slow on the sugar and just being more mindful and intentional about it. I mean, I think if you weren't thinking about it at all, kids' lives would be dominated with sugar, treats, candy, desserts at age 2 for sure, and just how that impacts their blood sugar, which then impacts their mood. My whole thought and hope was to really build the healthiest cells. I want them to have great digestion, a really strong immune system, because, oh my gosh, childhood, right? They need it, especially this day and age. And I wanted their blood sugar to be as balanced as possible, because that means their moods will be balanced and you get less of the extremes on the, emotions, tantrums. I'm not saying that those don't happen. They definitely do. But just minimizing the sort of randomness of those things, and sometimes foods versus all the time foods. Another tip, leading with veggies first. I know I said that in a high level, but I also mean that legitimately in your day-to-day life and in your meals. If they are ever hungry in between meals, what I offer first is usually some sort of vegetable. So cut up peppers or carrots or celery or cucumbers. And as an adult, if you are truly hungry, those things sound really good. If you're bored and you're just wanting to do something, it's kind of like, nah, I don't really need that right now. I can wait. So that's usually always my first go-to, because it's a good gauge as to are they actually hungry or not. On that note, I also very much lead with meals, especially for my kids and for myself, versus just snacking all day. Because in the context of a meal, you are so much more likely to eat some vegetables, probably, maybe some good protein or good healthy fat, things that are very satisfying and deeply nourishing for your body on all levels. Whereas snacks can be fruit, maybe it's some random bar or something where you then are eating these snack foods that aren't actually as nourishing or grounding as eating a real meal. So I tend to just focus on meals with my kids. And then if they do need a snack at different phases of their growth, maybe once a day, maybe twice a day. And so having the snack foods, quote unquote, be like mostly vegetables or fruit or nuts or something like olives, something that have that stabilizing healthy fat versus empty snack food that it doesn't really give them anything. It doesn't really fill them up. It's just activity. So I try as much as possible to not do that. I guess the exception would be like on days that we travel, it's all about having as many snacks as possible. Or if you're doing an outing that may go over lunch, it's basically packing a lunch, but in different little containers and bags. So it feels like a snack lunch. I also lead with veggies too, like in that 4 to 5 o'clock time when they are maybe seeming like they're hungry or they need a little bit of something to get them to dinner. I will do veggies. And A, that ensures that they will eat them. B, usually at that time they are hungriest. And so giving the veggies first, whether that's in the time you're prepping dinner, it's just something they can snack on and have, and they're kind of a part of the process of making dinner together, or that you cook the veggie part of the meal first and you can give that to them early to tide them over. This way you ensure that they're eating them, right? And they're eating them at the point when they're the most hungry, which is the most likely success rate that you will have. Versus, I guess, always letting them snack on fruit or snack all the way from like that mid-afternoon time to dinner, and then they're not hungry at dinner, then they're not going to eat their veggies and or anything else probably on their plate that is also really nourishing for them. Something else that might help, adding whatever meal that you are making, like yes, maybe sometimes it's plated differently. I'm not really going to separate their food even from the very beginning, unless they're a baby and they can't be doing some of the things that we are doing, or their bodies are not ready to have butter yet, or whatever it may be. For the most part, I just season my food as normal. So some salt and pepper. I use cinnamon and herbs. I don't do a ton of super spicy, but also if it's in the dish, if it's curry, that's what I give them. And I think that that has helped me not be so nervous or hesitant, like they have to have these separate meals or I have to flavor things later. I just do it all at once from a young age, and then that becomes their norm. And that has been something that has really helped. Another idea that I have also found helpful is whatever the main meal is, maybe it's like a soup or it's something in the Instant Pot where you can create just a tiny toppings bar, or everybody can add their own things, like whether that's ketchup, or we use a lot of hemp seeds and we call them sprinkles. The sprinkles go on anything from like a banana and almond butter, sprinkles on top of toast. Or avocado toast, or they can add their own Parmesan cheese is a big one, or avocado, just little ways that they can feel a little bit more in control of creating their food and having it be a little bit of a more playful experience, and everybody gets to do their own thing, but it's the same basic meal. You're just pulling some condiments out of the fridge or grating some cheese. Those little things I think sometimes can go a long way in terms of having kids be excited about dinner and ready to eat. So one of the last things I'll say too is that this really, really helps, and this whole food and feeding situation feels so much more streamlined when you do have some basic pantry staples, freezer staples, stuff in your fridge, like you have the produce every week. So just making it a part of your life and a priority to get to the store, to get your groceries delivered, even using a place like Thrive Market. They have amazing kids snacks and the Chomps meat sticks and upgraded versions of maybe things that you would find in a more typical place, but they can just be sent to your door, which when you are a parent can be life-saving. So just having good stuff around, I find, is just always half of the process sometimes. Definitely half of the process. And then thinking about their intake of food, is this a balanced meal? So when I feed them, I am looking at their plate. This is for lunch and dinner. There's going to be a vegetable. There's probably going to be some sort of protein or healthy fat, maybe sometimes both, and then something for grain or a carbohydrate. So maybe it's steamed broccoli, maybe it's, cauliflower or roasted veggies or grilled zucchini or sauteed zucchini or cooked carrots, whatever it may be, and then some type of protein, whether that's beans or lentils, or it's leftover chicken, or it's, nitrate-free turkey slices, some kind of fat, just something that's stabilizing for their body and for their blood sugar. And are you noticing this is like the same way we should be eating as adults, just like balanced, normal, healthy, real food with these different components to them? And it's kind of a breath of fresh air. It's a good reminder as an adult. So am I getting these basic things enough to feed my body and to keep it stabilized? Just a good question. Is this something that will keep me full for at least a couple hours, or am I going to be starving after I eat this? I just always have that mindset. There's little tiny things that you can do like that I think do make a difference again over time. And we just want balanced, normal, real foods and a variety of them, and almost just keeping it as simple as that. It's a good reminder for us as adults, don't you think? And the last tip I have, and it's something that I'm just sort of getting into now that my son can sort of understand a little bit more about, being healthy enables us to be strong and to play longer and to be faster at soccer and running and, having more energy to play with your friends and, talking to them about the things that matters. Like, what does eating healthy and being healthy enable them to do that they like in their life, and using that in a positive way. This is when you eat and take care of your body. This is what your body will then be able to do for you. And just starting that mentality from a really young age. And then when Noah gets to be the age of reading and understanding, you can believe for sure that I will be showing him labels. And look, like this is, this version of this is a little bit easier to understand, or it has fewer ingredients. And that means that it's easier for our bodies to understand and break it down. And it's actually being kinder to our bodies, foods that it knows how to digest and it knows how to process and it knows how to turn into energy. And so just like explaining, I think the why behind it changes it from this conversation of being you telling them what to do, or you have to eat like this, or this is the way we eat, to more like, hey, here's why, here's why we make it a priority. Here's why we want to be healthy. Here's why we take care of our bodies in this way, and just keeping it light, keeping it positive. It doesn't have to be this controlling thing, but just as light as you can keep it, the more simple you can keep it, I think the better. This is something that I am just in process with, but I do want to share with you the things that I am in process with. I'm currently trying, testing, seeing how it goes, seeing the things that resonate. And I do remember that back in the day when people used to tell me, oh, just wait, they would also say like, well, you'll probably have one kid that is not picky at all, but then just wait for your next one. So even after I had my son, they would say, well, just wait for the next one, It's just not true. It's just not true. I just think there are so many things that we can do that influence their taste buds, that influence their cells, that influence their organs, that influence their brain. It's such a beautiful thing to be in charge and gifting that to your child. That's just my perspective on it, is I see this as a gift and something that I can give them that's going to serve them for the rest of their life. The fact that they don't think eating vegetables is weird or bad or tastes, horrible, what a gift. Don't you wish as an adult that you could have some of these things as just your norms? And that's truly my whole hope in this, is like, I treat this as such a beautiful thing that I get to do instead of something that I have to do. Like, I'm not burdened by it. I delight in it. And I think maybe that mentality is something too that is worth sharing, because I just think of the impact that it could have. Wow. Think about a life like that, where you enjoy food, you love it, you love eating healthy. That's your normal. That's your usual. You're used to feeling good. You're used to like your immune system being pretty strong and hardy and able to handle a lot of things. And you're used to feeling in control of your body and with a more stabilized blood sugar. Just think of what that would enable you to do in your life, and that confidence that would build in yourself, that trust in your own body that would build, like even from a very young age. So that is my goal. TBD on how this all turns out when they're adults. Maybe that will be a podcast episode, in like 15 years. We'll see. But anyways, I hope that this is helpful to just sort of pull back the curtain a little bit and share with you some of these little tiny things that I do that I guess are maybe a little bit different than the norm, and how I'm just embracing it and truly like loving feeding my family and thinking of it as such a gift that I get to do. So I hope it's helpful to hear. Would love any other questions that you have about it with yourself, but also with your kids, with your family. This is so about doing what feels right to you. Take the things that are interesting and making you curious. And if something doesn't resonate, or if it doesn't fit, or if it doesn't work, leave it. That's the beauty. That's the beauty of this. And that's true with all things. Follow your own instinct on this, your own intuition, your own kids. Everybody is beautifully unique. As you start to think about incorporating or shifting changes, it's also important to think of, you don't need to do this all at once. This can be something that you sort of slowly infuse a little bit more in your life. And maybe it's starting there. Maybe it's starting to slowly replace some of the more processed snacks. Maybe it's involving your kids more in that process, taking them to the store and letting them pick out something else that feels like a little bit more of an upgraded version of the thing that they love. Or maybe it's involving them with meals, or starting a little herb garden or veggie garden. They get to tend to it and plant it or trim it or whatever it is. I hope that you can find just one little thing that helps this week, that encourages you, that helps you think maybe about the bigger picture too. And that any amount of time that you put into your food, into taking care of the bodies of the people that you love, that it is always worth it. Thank you so much for listening, for being here today. And again, send me any questions you might have after you listen. If you enjoyed this episode and want more like it, make sure you're subscribed to the Simply Real Life podcast, wherever you listen to podcasts, and maybe share it with a friend or two. That would mean the world.